So let's read the Gemara, and we'll review what we read yesterday, and then we'll continue going a little further to the next one. We really read we read like the next 10, 15 lines, and then we'll read the next 10, 15 lines. So the Gemara says, Lefnei oto bet din hu de ein sotrin. The Gemara sounds like the Mishnah says, if we tracked him down, we brought him back to the original court, we do not retract his original, we not appeal the original verdict. But what it would sound like from the fact it says in front of that bet din, what happens if we tracked him down, a different bet din tracked him down? It would sound like that maybe we would give him a retrial. He's claiming that he could prove his innocence. And if he wants that appeal, maybe we will give him the retrial. That's what the Mishnah says. He said it came to that court, we do not give him a retrial. Why does it say that court? Any court doesn't give a retrial. It sounds like only that court we will not give him a retrial. But the Gemara says, but Hatani Seifa, but we saw in the end of in the next case of the Mishnah, Kol Makom, any place, Sheyamdu Shnayim, the two people get up, V'yomru me'idim anu et ish ploni, Shenigmar dino bebetin. I'm reading very fast. Slow it down a little bit. Kol Makom, any time, Sheyamdu Shnayim, two people get up, V'yomru, they say, me'idim anu et ish ploni. We come to testify against so-and-so. Shenigmar dino bebetin ploni. Is that his verdict was sealed in the bet din in New York. We come in California and we say in New York his verdict was sealed and he just jumped his sentence. Uploni edav. And there are even witnesses who were so-and-so were the witnesses, and when they even say the day that it happened in New York when we saw this happen. Even though now it's in California, we still will kill the guy, even though it's not in the same bet din that originally closed the case. The Mishnah in the beginning contradicts the Mishnah in the end. The Mishnah in the beginning sounds like that anytime it's in that court, we will not reopen the case, but in a different court, we will reopen the case. The Mishnah at the end sounds like even in a different court, we will not reopen the case. On that, the Gemara says is that there's a big difference between the beginning of Mishnah, the Mishnah is talking about in the beginning and the end. Amar Abaye says, Lo kasha, this is not a contradiction. We can answer the contradiction. Kan be'eretz Yisrael, kan b'chutz la'aretz. Is that when somebody ran to Eretz Yisrael, then we will give him a retrial. If he ran to Chutz La'aretz, we will not give him a retrial. So if he started out, so we'll assume if he started out in Chutz La'aretz and then he ran to Eretz Yisrael, we will give him a retrial. Of course, if he started out there in Eretz Yisrael, so we'll see. The Gemara will actually continue and talk about this. But if he started out in Chutz La'aretz, ran to Eretz Yisrael, we'll give him a retrial in Eretz Yisrael. Started out in Eretz Yisrael, we will not give him a retrial in Eretz Yisrael. But the point is, he ran from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, boom, we give him a retrial. The question is, what's the system? Why, if he ran to, we never give the guy a retrial, he just claims, give me a retrial. But if he comes to court, from last case was a case that was closed in New York. Now his case is being closed, he's brought it to Bet Din in Eretz Yisrael, we'll give him a retrial. What's the difference? What's the system? So the Gemara, we'll see in the next Gemara, explains what's the reasoning behind this, why there should be a difference between if he ran from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, or if he ran from Chutz La'aretz to Chutz La'aretz, and we will not give him a retrial. If he ran from Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, we will not give him a retrial. There's one case where we will give him a retrial. If he ran from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara continues. We're right here.
Yes. If he was convicted in New York, now he runs to California. Let's say they weren't doing this open saying this would happen and I'd like to retry my case.
So that was a question that was brought up yesterday a little bit. He mentioned it, is that what happens if he shows up by himself? He hands himself into the neck. He wasn't dragged out. He shows up, he says, let me retry my case. So it's a good question. I'm assuming that we will still not give him the retrial, even if he hands himself in, unless he could somehow come with a claim to prove his innocence. Like we said yesterday, is that of course we will always give people retrials if they come with valid information in their hands. But now, if you want to know why, I'm not just the reason why I'm making that assumption is because the beginning of that would be a new way to answer the Gemara's question, because maybe the beginning of the Mishnah was talking about where he came in by himself, and the next case of the Mishnah was talking about where we drag them down, which is very clear. The next case is we drag them down. So why don't the Gemara say your answer? So I'm assuming the Gemara believes that the Gemara holds that even if he shows up himself, it's not going to make for a difference. The point is, you have information for us, you have a reason why we should accept your case or not. Even if he hands himself in, that's not enough of a reason. Okay? That's what it would seem. But it's a very nice question to be brought out. Now, so the Gemara continues. Omar Abai says, Lo kash. It's not a contradiction. Kan be'eretz Yisrael, kan b'chutz la'aretz. Is that when he runs to Eretz Yisrael, then we give him a retrial. Kan b'chutz la'aretz. If he's in chutz la'aretz, he didn't run to Eretz Yisrael, then we will not give him a retrial. The Gemara says the Tanya, as we have learned in a brisa, this concept. Abai was not the one it was his original. It was not his original concept. It was not his original concept. It's a brisa already from hundreds of years before Abai. This differentiation was made already. The rabbis previously said this. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda ben Doistoi Eimer. Rabbi Yehuda ben Doistoi said, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach, in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach, that Barach may Aretz l'chutz la'aretz. If somebody runs from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz, ain socher asina, then we will not give him a retrial. May chutz la'aretz, but if he ran from outside of Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, socher asina, we will give him a retrial. Now, why is that? What's the difference? The Gemara says, Mipnei zechuta shel Eretz Yisrael. In the merit of Eretz, because of the zchut of Eretz Yisrael. What does it mean, the zchut of Eretz Yisrael? So we quote a Rashi. Rashi says, we want to see the Rashi inside, if we want, right in the beginning of the Gemara. It says Rashi, Mipnei, quotes the Gemara, Mipnei zchuta shel Eretz Yisrael, ulai toil, maybe it'll help him, lim solo petach shel zchut. That will help him find opening, he'll be able to come with an original, he'll be able to find an opening in the case, we'll call it like he'll find a hole in the original verdict, basically. He's going to find a way to get out of the original verdict. Why? A loophole, exactly. That's what I was saying. Find a loophole. How will he find this loophole? Because he ran from chutz la'aretz to Eretz Yisrael. That'll give him the zchut to find the loophole. So, which means when somebody has a case, a court case, people think, it's all about the cold hard facts. What is the case? Innocent, guilty. It's a matter of his zchutim. That's what it's a matter of. If he has the zchut, then they'll find a way for him to win the case. Doesn't have the zchut, won't find a way for him to win the case. And now we know this guy, he has an additional zchut that he did not have when the first verdict was, when he was in court last time, he did not have this zchut. So it's very it could be, is that now his chances are much higher for winning the case. So therefore we'll reopen the case for him because his zchutim are much higher. And we said over that beautiful story yesterday at the end of the shir with the person that I know that he was very sick, and he went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and Rav Chaim Kanievsky told him, move to Eretz Yisrael. He moved 2 days later, and he's a young person. He's here very fine to tell the tale. But we said yesterday, it's very likely Rav Chaim Kanievsky got this from this Gemara right here. That's where he knew this from. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we spoke about yesterday. It's on?
Yeah, it is recording.
So that's what he said yesterday, is that it could be that the source to this, that somebody who has a Gemara did, and he wants to get out of that Gemara did. If he gets to the zchut of Eretz Yisrael, that could get him out of that Gemara did. That's what the Gemara is saying right here, is that his feeling was sealed, his case was sealed, but he has a way to get out of it through having more zchutim. And there's one of the zchutim that the Gemara mentions, if he has the zchut of Eretz Yisrael, that he went from chutz la'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, that's an unbelievable merit. Now in his court case, he might be found innocent, which is the basic rule that we always have, is that when even things which seem to be in man's hands, the case of court, there's a witnesses, evidence, it's really dependent on his zchutim. And like we say these types of things all the time, we dive into Hashem. Nitzor lishoni meira. Watch my mouth from saying the wrong thing. Say, watch your mouth. What are you praying for? It sounds like this. No, if somebody wants to get somewhere, even if it seems like something which is in his hands, if you pray for it, your chances are up. Somebody makes fun of somebody, and it's rough. It's hard. How does he get saved from it? So you say, get over it, man. Whatever he tells us. No, he prays to Hashem. Nafshi tidon. To the person who embarrasses me and curses me, let my soul be silent and be fine. Person wants to get, he has that tefillah, Hashem is the one that's in charge of whatever happens and helps him in all cases and circumstances. And even in the thing which seems to be just the facts on the table. No. If he davens to Hashem or he has the Zchut of Eretz Yisrael, that can change his fate. Let's see the Gemara continuing. Let's continue the Gemara. Right, so we're going to show if he's ready in Israel, it didn't work the first time. So if it didn't work the first time, so it would seem that then we're not going to give him a second chance either. Yeah, fine. So let's continue over here. Sanhedrin Noheget, that with the Mishnah reported the halacha that the Sanhedrin, the High Court, they practice both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz. The Gemara asks, Mina Hanimidi, where do we learn this halacha out in the Torah? Where does it say in the Torah this halacha that Beis Din would practice the High Court to kill even in Chutz La'aretz? So the Gemara says we learn this out from the pasuk. The pasuk says the Tanu Rabbanan. The pasuk says the Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis learned the Hayu Eile Lachem Lechukat Mishpat Doratechem. This should be the rule of the law for generations, and the pasuk really continues Bechol Moshvotechem, in all your dwelling places. In all your dwelling places, which means, what does it mean, all your dwelling places? Even if you're not in the Holy Land, any dwelling places, you have these laws. Laman, we learn from here, the Sanhedrin to the High Court, Shenoheget, we see from this pasuk that we practice Ba'aretz u'Chutz, both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz. Im came, but then there's a question on this because there's a different pasuk that seems to be contradicting this. It's a different pasuk that seems to say that the High Court is only in Eretz Yisrael. Let to know what would be the reason for that. Maybe we'll try to explain a little bit why should we differentiate that the High Court should only be practicing in Eretz Yisrael, not in Chutz La'aretz. But it seems to be a pasuk saying that way. The pasuk says, "Im kein matam lomer bisharecha," in your gates, not in anybody's town, in anybody's gates, in your shoftim v'shotrim, the judges and the shotrim, the ones that take out and enforce the law, titin lecha bisharecha, you should put in your gates, which seems to imply only in your land you have this halacha shoftim v'shotrim, but not in your place, not in your land. It would seem that you do not have the halacha of shoftim v'shotrim. So the Gemara says, bisharecha ata moshev batei dinim b'chol plach u'plach. In your dwelling place, you have batei dinim in all the big cities, ubechol ir va'ir, and even in the small little towns, you have the batei dinim. Ubechutz la'aretz, but outside of Eretz Yisrael, at the moshiv b'chol plach u'plach, you have the bet din in all the big towns. V'yat moshiv b'chol ir va'ir, you only have in the big cities, you don't have in the towns, in small towns. So now here's the halacha comes out, recorded halacha, that the Gemara says is that in Chutz La'aretz there are less batei dinim than in our land. In our land, the bet din is every little town. In Chutz La'aretz, it's only in the big towns. We are not in the small towns. That's how our Gemara says. The question would be, what would be the reason for such a policy? If we want bet din, we want bet din everywhere. So why would there be such a difference? It's all. So it could be is because when we have our land, we be in total control. But bet din, we're the ones that enforce everything. So in bet din, we're in total control of every little thing that's going on. When we're not in Eretz Yisrael, it could be we're in less control, we're less putting down our foot down. we're in other people's land. But I'm not sure. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe there are other reasons why there'll be such a halacha. Makes so much. Fine, let's see the next. This was the next part of the Mishnah. Sanhedrin ha'horeged. Sanhedrin that kills. We have a question. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah Omer, how often do you kill achat l'shivim shana? Once in 70 years. What does he mean when he says once in 70 years? Once in 70 years is overkill? Are the bruisers? Or once in 70 years is the rate, is how it should be? What does he mean to say? Which means, is he a continuation of the beginning of the Mishnah? The beginning of the Mishnah said that you kill, that you once in 7 years is overdone. So when he replies once in 70 years, what does he mean to say? What does he mean to say is once in 70 years is normal, or once in 70 years is even that's over? Is that overkill, overdone? So that's the question. What is when he says once in 70 years? Was he in response then? Was he saying once in 70 years is normal? Or was he saying once in 70 years is considered overdone? So the Gemara says, once in 70 years, does he mean to say that's called overdone? That's called the bruisers, Odilma Orach Arahu. Or maybe all he means to say is it's normal once in 70 years. Orach Arahu, that's the regular way of the land. That's the way to do it once in 70 years. Take it. And we explained very nice, we explained yesterday, I think Nathan mentioned it, is that what's this whole argument? How often does Bet Din kill? It's what type of system you should set up. It's of course on averages. Of course, if something would happen that the same reason why you killed that once in 70 years, that would have occurred 10 times. So you would kill even 10 times in 1 year. Or the Rambam says in his Pirush HaMishnayot, you kill 1,000 in 1 day. But the system that you set up on the average in the regular society that they had back then, how do you set up the system? Is it soft or hard? How soft? Very soft. Medium rare? How do you cut it? How do you have it? So that's what the Gemara is. They're arguing the Mishnah is how soft or how hard are you? And this is what we were building up to get to, is the argument of how strong or how hard. How do you not face the facts of the testimony? You have these witnesses in front of you. What do you do to get at? How does Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon, they say, what, we're never going to kill. We're on the high court. There will never be a death in all our days. Once in 70 years, that's also too much. Never. If we're on the court. If we sat on the court, never. How'd they get out of it? There's witnesses in front of you telling, listen, we saw straight up Reuven killed Shimon. How do you get out of it? So how do you get out of it? How do you get her out of the testimony that's coming in front of you? Shalom. Yeah, nice to meet you. So how do you get out of the testimony that's in front of your eyes? So let's see the Gemara, how the Gemara says, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, if they were on the Bet Din, what would they have done? The Gemara says, what was their way? What was their tactic to not accept the testimony? The Torah says you have the witnesses finished. You have the testimony. Go follow through with the law of the Torah. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lezer, the Omri Tavai, they both said to answer this question. Ritem Trefa Harag. Did you check out the guy who he killed? Was he a trefa? Maybe he had some internal issue inside of him that he was either way going to die within the year. And somebody who has such a trefa, which means there's certain type of internal issues that something could have. There's halachot by animals of the trefa. This is not going to live through the year. There are also halacha, a person who's not going to live through the year. The halacha is that somebody kills him. The person who kills is not considered a rotzeach, not considered a murderer, because he killed somebody who, in a certain sense, is not a man of living. The Gemara discusses exactly the details of why, but he's not. So even if the person's a young person, but who said he didn't have any internal issue that would make it that the person who killed is not chayav meat. So that's what that's what they would tell the witnesses. Anybody, you're coming in and saying that Reuven killed Shimon, but who said that's grounds for killing Reuven? Maybe Shimon was a person that was chayav. Is he trying to talk? I can't get it. Maybe Shimon was a person that was a trefa, and therefore Reuven's innocent from his guilt. He's not innocent, but he's not going to get killed for killing somebody who was already going to die, who's going to die that year. So who said, how can we kill Reuven? That's what Rabbi Akiva and Tafan would say. What the Gemara says, but Amar Rabashi continues. Let's say, so that's what the Gemara says. Did you see if the guy that they killed, was he a treifa or a shalem? Was he perfectly complete inside? Do you know that fact? They're in the middle of going, examining the witnesses, all the information they know. Do you know that? Do you know that information? And Rabbi Ashi even takes it further. Im timsa lomar, if you say shalem harav, let's say the witnesses say, you know what we actually did? We did an autopsy. And we found out, we checked through all his parts, and we found perfect. So now what do you say, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva? What do you respond to that? How you said a statement? Autopsies are sore. That's a very good question. How can you give autopsy? So one thing that it could be, what were you going to say? Autopsies are sore, very sore. You can't treat a Jew like that, give an autopsy. How could they give an autopsy? So, first of all, it could be maybe they did, even if it was asur. But if they responded that they did an autopsy, or it could, unclear. It's a very good question. But autopsy. So it could be. It happens. It's asur autopsy. So it happens to be the only way around. Yeah. So how do they give the autopsy in the first place? Let's bring race.
Police come in and say, we insist to do an autopsy. They want to do it. We stop everything we do to stop it.
Yeah, so we stay far away autopsy. So what's going on? So it happens to be the Gemara in this would sound is that maybe they did it. That's what I would have said from this Gemara. But the Gemara in Chulin sounds like that there is a thought in the Gemara over there that it could be maybe in order to get the killer that killed him, we will be allowed, that will be an exception to the rule, is that usually you're not allowed to do an autopsy because you care for this person who just got killed. But I would just think maybe the way to twist to say it is that if it's in order to get the revenge of his blood, we're not talking about getting the revenge of somebody else's blood. We're coming to do something you can't do, and you can't mess him up because you need to do what's best for him. And that's why you can't give him the nivul hamet. You can't make them do the autopsy. It's terrible treatment to him. But what happens if you're doing it in order to for his own blood, to get him back, to get the guy who got, so that there's a thought that it would be allowed. But that's not a grounds for autopsy. So it's questionable.
In order not to kill somebody. It was not to be so much weird to say, oh, they kill him.
So that's what you say, not to do the autopsy? Do it.
Do the autopsy.
If you what happens if you don't do the But if you don't do the autopsy, you'll be saved. No, if you don't do the autopsy, so then we'll say, how do you know?
If you do autopsy and he had this, what did you call it?
Yeah, this treifa.
Then the guy's off the hook.
But I'm not sure, because it could be is that if you don't do the autopsy, I definitely hear that, but it could be the other way. If you don't do the autopsy, so we're going to ask this question. We're going to ask this question: was he a treifa or a shalem? So that's this question. Oh, so that's a very, very good question. But that seems like their question that Rabbi Akiva was asking. We're going to discuss that question. He's bringing up, I have very bad names. Mark actually is bringing up a very good question. But either way, bad names. So
that's because he's very smart.
But I still should know some people's names right now. But basically, the rove is, so the Gemara over here seems, if you read the Gemara simply, the Gemara seems is that even though there's a rove, we ask the question, do you know that he was a treifa? And if they can't answer the question, the Gemara seems to say is that we're not going to kill them. Now the question is, but there's a rove. And that's what really Tosfot asked this question, is that there's a rove, and because of the rove, what type of questions is he treifa? They say, we don't know, and there's a rove, so finished, kill him. That's the Tosfot asked this question. So we'll try to get involved in that in a minute or two, if we have the chance. So the Gemara says, Rav Ashi said, Im tim salomar, if you will say, Shalim Have, that he was a Shalim. That he was, they said we did the autopsy and we found out that he was perfect inside, it came out perfect. So now what would Rabbi Akiva say? What would they respond to that? They said we're never going to kill. This case is grounds to kill. This stuck. Rabbi Akiva, you got to kill them now. So you know what we would ask? Dilma, maybe Makkos Saif naked. Wherever he, in that place where he got stabbed, however he got killed, somebody made some hole inside him by stabbing, maybe right there. He had a hole there. How can you tell that? There's no way to tell that bullet. If maybe when it blew up, but it was already a hole there where it blew up. The guy died from it, so obviously it was some place which was an integral part. It wasn't like his finger blew off, because or else that would not be a reason that he died. Obviously, in fact, he died from it. It means that he hit something that's his life is on the line because of it. So maybe in that place itself, he had some sort of issue there, and then you just can't tell because there's no evidence for that because it was stabbed either way, it was blew off either way. So how could you kill? Or let's say that was a case of somebody testified that somebody killed the other one. Let's say somebody testified beboil at the erba. Let's say there's halacha is that somebody, let's say, goes in the improper relations and has them and Betin kills for some of them Betin kills. Just different ones. I think some of them Betin kills, other ones Betin doesn't kill, but the ones that Betin kills. So what would Rabbi Akiva say that in those circumstances, two witnesses come and say, we saw that they were having improper relations, and therefore it's on grounds to kill. So what would Rabbi Akiva respond in such a circumstance? So what would Rabbi Akiva say? Abaye v'Rava the Amri Tabayu. Abaye and Rava, they both say, response would be, Ritem kimimchol bishuf foferet. That's like foferet is a tube. A chol is like it's like the tube they used to keep the things the makeup, I guess, the types of that they used to keep the makeup in a tube. And they, in order to get the makeup out of the tube, you take a little thing of wood, a little chip of wood, dip it in, take out the makeup that was in the tube. So did you see that itself happen when they were being boiled at the Erva? You saw the actual act happen, or you just saw them laying next to each other? What did you see? They would ask such a question. And if
How'd you get the makeup with you?
so he's just saying, it's just saying the example. He's just saying as an example, there's a tube, and then there's something that you put into the tube, there's a twig. So he's saying when he saw the actual act of the man going to the lady, that's the term that he's using. Did you see the actual act, or you just saw them laying next to each other?
He's saying lying together or on a murder?
No, we're talking about when they were lying together, and they came to testify that they were lying together, and different case. When they're coming to testify against somebody who did Giloy Arayot, who went to the improper relations. The man went to the improper to the lady who was Asur. Did you see the exact action, or you just saw them lying next to each other? So you can't see that. So therefore, boom, you're going to get out every time somebody's going to testify that they were lying to you. So which means two different cases would come into Bedin. One case which comes in is a case people want to kill people on the grounds of murder. The other case, somebody wants to kill on the grounds because he had the improper relations. If we try to kill on the grounds of murder, we tell them, was it trefa? Did you see in that place? Was there a hole already where the stab was? But let's say somebody comes in to testify that somebody was with the wrong lady, should not have been with. What does Bedin say? How did we save that guy? How did Rabbi Akiva not kill him? Rabbi Akiva said we would never kill anybody, even in a case, not only if a Rotzeach, not only somebody kills, not only if a Rotzeach we would save, we would even save somebody who did Giloy Arayot. How do you save somebody who did Giloy Arayot? We would ask him, did you see them laying together, or did you see the actual act?
So going back to Shefat, that means anybody and everybody could be Shefat, and that nullifies killing everybody according to.
That's what it would seem. And then we're going to have to deal with the question that was raised, what happened to Rov? Very hard question. Then the Gemara in Chulin says, we know that there's a halacha of Rov because the Torah says you kill the murderer. How could you kill the murderer? Maybe the guy who killed was a trefa. Maybe there's as long as if there's no such thing as Rov, so maybe there's a small chance. So how could you kill the trefa? It must be that you go after Rov. So how could the Gemara here say such claim? we'll try to continue this after Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Yes. Yes, nice to meet you. Shalom, Dr. Truth. Nice to meet you. Shalom, shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Monday, Bizat.
Yes, Monday.
Thanks for putting this together.
Yes.
I was in OAE.
Okay. Okay,
Thanks
good.
for putting this stuff together. Hey, Robert. Oh, good. You're doing very good. I know it's a tough job to fill in. Robert Friedman. This is Robert Friedman.
Yes.
You ask your dad, what is this trick of remember people's name?